Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story: the owner, my boss, thought I overcharged the job and lost money. The second story: client wanted to talk only with a man. In the end, he paid more. The third story: I kept a record of my work in real time, with an interval of 6 minutes. The first story is: don't want to heed my warning about giving deep discounts to wealthy clients? I work for a company that does commissions for clients. I am the manager of my department. This comes with a number of responsibilities. One of them is bidding on work. Last fall, I evaluated the current global situation and how it would be affecting the costs of our supplies and possible shortages as well as inflation. As a result, I priced a few of our pieces of work to help prepare us for the price increases I had predicted, giving us an 8 to 10% profit upon completion. A well-known client came in and contracted us to do a rather large and time-intensive project. This individual is very well off and is in no way in any danger to be going broke anytime soon. However, this client complained about the new prices. He had contracted us in the past on certain items and wanted the same work done again, but seeing the new price, he complained to the boss and threatened to go elsewhere. The owner, my boss, decided I had priced the work too high based on the complaints of this one customer. Previous customers had not batted an eye. Boss asks me to adjust the price down to be the same as the competition. Just so you know, the competition does not carry the same quality standards and often has a 2 to 3 year turnaround. I explained this to the boss that my numbers were based on the increases from suppliers and subcontractors, who I speak to regularly. These companies we work with warned me beforehand about what was coming, and I took it all to heart. I had passed the warning on to the boss at the time, but it appeared he blew it off or forgot about it, and at the time of making the new price list, he didn't complain. It wasn't until this one, somewhat well-known client rose a stink that he decided to bring the issues up with me. So boss insisted that we should be pricing lower to keep up with the competition, or we would lose this customer. Of course, I argued that it would hurt us in the long run, and all we would be doing is attracting tire kickers. He stood his ground though, and I didn't have the energy to fight him on it. So in the end, he's the boss and got what he wanted. So the time came to order the supplies and pay the subcontractors. The cost of these materials as well as the work done on them were 90% of the price boss had agreed to the customer. This is before my own labor costs were factored in. Boss sees the bill and gets really upset and asks me what the customer was paying to have the work done. I gently reminded him this was for rich tire kicker customer, and I had warned him well beforehand, but because he wanted to retain rich tire kicker customer, he got what he wanted, but the company did the work it cost, and perhaps more with my labor factored in. Boss later came to me and asked me to make up a new price list. I told him I didn't need to. I did that last fall, and as long as no one gives deep discounts, we will be in the green. He's listening to me now. Great story. I like that your boss finally agreed with your way of thinking. Your business model should be set up to make a profit based on the work you do, not on what the customer is worth. Sometimes you can bid low, but it has to be because you'll get future work from the same client, which will cover any losses due to low grade work. I was in a similar situation at my old company. And if your company is small and doesn't know what they're doing, I suggest you start looking for another job. I used to work in plumbing, and I told our estimator that they needed to raise their prices. Our material costs were going crazy, and the designs he was proposing were months in the making. He replied, "Then we won't get the job." Of course, we didn't get the money and the company went into deficit. I started looking for another job, and I found one. The second story is, you want to deal with a man? Alright, so be it. Okay, so I run a smallish business with my mother, uncle, aunt, and occasionally brother and girlfriend. Fireworks, balloons, and various stuff, and decorations for events, weddings, funerals, other businesses, etc., etc. Small town, not crazy busy, but not swatting flies out of boredom. So guy walks in Monday, wants a huge balloon arch and some other designs, plus fireworks, plus some custom-made stickers for the coming Sunday, for his wedding. My mom greets him. I was at the bank at the time, and asks him to elaborate on what he needs. He gets all smug and demands to speak to the man who is usually at the store, me, because a woman wouldn't understand the complexity of the order. Mind you, my mother is literally the backbone of the entire business. She makes the balloon designs, sets them up nice and pretty, arranges them, the whole shebang. So she tells him to come back tomorrow when I'll be in. I come back from the bank. She tells me the story and tells me to handle it, although she'd prefer if we didn't deal with the idiot at all. And so malicious compliance time. Monday goes by. Tuesday comes and I head to the shop. Dude walks in around 11 a.m. My mom nudges me to let me know he's the guy. I start with the whole, "Hey, welcome, what can we do for you, blah blah," and he starts telling me his complex order. I stop him, tell him I have to go to the bank, it's urgent, and he can tell my mom what he needs. She will be more than able to help him. His face goes fully sour and asks when I'll be back. I tell him in 2 to 3 hours, give or take. He can either wait for me or come back tomorrow. He waits for an hour or so and leaves. Comes back Wednesday morning. Same story. I have to meet our supplier. We'll be out for 2 to 3 hours. He waits again for the second day in a row. Thursday comes around. He walks in again. This time I fully intend to listen to him, so I grab a pen and paper and I'm ready to take notes. He asks for 3 of our simplest balloon designs, and the cheap ones at that, in 3 different colors, some basic fireworks, and asks if we can be at the wedding to set it up and light up the fireworks. After a certain level, fireworks must be lit by professionals with specific licenses, us. So I look him dead in the eye and let him know that I have absolutely no idea how to help him, seeing as the balloons and the fireworks are not my area of expertise, and he will have to defer to my mother. His face turns pale. He begrudgingly tells her all the same things he just told me. She writes it down and lets him know that he'll be charged extra for the things he wants, because we should have been told on Monday, and now we're gonna have to spend all night making it. So it's gonna be an extra 40%. The price tag for all the stuff was around $1,000. He starts losing it, refusing to pay that much for the things and the service. Thing is, nobody else does what we do, at least not anywhere close. So my mother very kindly lets him know that if he had told her what he needed on Monday, instead of waiting for me, he wouldn't have to pay the 40% extra. And if he wasn't going to book us on the spot, then the extra charge would climb, as we would have even less time to fulfill his order. He obviously agrees because there was nothing else he could do, pay up and leaves. We went to the wedding, did our job, got paid, and he was probably peeved as hell the entire time. Good stupid tax on this malicious compliance result. This guy is stupid. Of all the things someone could say, only a man would know how to do it. I would never tie wedding decorations to one of them. I think women are better at this one. Maybe they might think it's about fireworks, but I couldn't imagine that anyone would think that women don't know anything about all those balloons and things like that. The real loser in this story is the bride. Hey, poor woman. She's gonna have a hard time living with a husband like that. And there's another question that worries me. Why the heck didn't this dude arrange this months in advance? I remember my wedding, and even for simple things, everything was booked at least 3 to 4 months in advance, and the guest lists were made about 6 months in advance. A word of advice: trust that people in the business know what the heck they're doing, and remember that there are ways and laws to protect you if the result is not of the quality you paid for. Just treat it prudently, really. The last story is, account for my time at work? No problem. A long time ago, I worked at a poorly managed boutique architectural firm as a drafter. My job included production drawings for home renovations. When I began working there, a coworker instructed me about accounting for my time, using a daily handwritten form, listing how long I worked on a project. 4 hours on Project X, lunch, 2 hours on Project X, 2 hours on Project Y, done for the day. We were supposed to turn them in at the end of the week. About 6 months later, I was not enjoying my time there, and it was pretty evident, but I continued doing my job to the best of my abilities. But the owner decided that I was obviously not working hard enough, since I was spending too much time on these projects, without completing them. She absent-mindedly did not account for the numerous revisions she continuously made, which would often redo work I had just completed. One day, she pulled me into her office and asked me to be more specific on my timesheets, to make sure I was not slacking off. She wanted to know what I was working on throughout the day, as working on Project X was no longer sufficiently describing what I did all day. I explained that this is what I was instructed to do, and there didn't appear to be a problem with it until now. I also confirmed that this was a request specifically for me only. Coworkers continued to account for their time as normal. No problem. I decided to break up my workday into smaller increments of time to comply with her request. I also made sure I no longer started early or stayed late off the clock. Here's how my timesheets started to look like. 8 a.m. to 8:06 a.m., 0.1 hours. Prepare for the day by starting this timesheet, booting up my workstation, and greeting coworkers. 8:06 a.m. to 8:12 a.m., 0.1 hours. Read email about Project X revisions, updated timesheet. 8:12 a.m. to 8:18 a.m., 0.1 hours. Continue reading email about Project X revisions, updated timesheet. 8:18 a.m. to 8:24 a.m., 0.1 hours. Begin working on Sheet 3.x sheet title for Project X, based on revisions provided via email. Updated timesheet. 8:24 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., 0.1 hours. Continue working on Sheet 3.x sheet title for Project X, based on revisions provided via email. Updated timesheet. Yes, I was accounting for my work in real time in 6-minute intervals. Each entry was carefully handwritten with as much detail as possible. I wanted to make sure she was fully appraised of my work. I made sure to note whenever I received a new revision and whatnot. The entries became longer and longer as I had to specify what I was doing, and it took time to update timesheet for each interval. I had a few entries that contained the 6-minute interval, with a description of finished updating previous timesheet entry, since the previous description was so detailed. At the end of the week, I made copies of my timesheets and turned in a booklet of pages, stapled for each day, and clipped together. I also turned in my 2-week notice. For my last few weeks, I continued to comply, but toned it down a notch by accounting for each 6-minute interval, but making the description entries more general, and using a lot of ditto marks underneath repetitive entries. I didn't want to kill the bookkeeper as it wasn't her fault. Luckily, I transitioned into the IT field shortly afterwards. Update. I replied to comments with more details about the fallout, and my coworkers' reactions as I recalled more info. This happened about 15 years ago, and I wrote this post on a whim, as I remembered the events. I'm fairly certain that the bookkeeper billed my time as normal, as it was clear when I began and ended working on Project X or Project Y. She just had a lot more pages to sift through for the start and end times. In the grand scheme of things, the project deadlines were shot to hell already, as normal, so I don't think anything really changed. I have no idea if the boutique firm closed or not. I just don't care. The bookkeeper gave me an earful first. Then I explained my special instructions and said I would tone it down so she could read it more easily next time. She knew I already submitted my 2 weeks. The bookkeeper then gave our boss, the owner, an earful. They had an interesting relationship. My boss didn't really speak to me much after that, and nothing specifically about my MC timesheets. My coworkers found out about a week later and thought it was great. They all knew that she wasn't easy to work for. Our project manager gave me a huge smile when he found out. The micromanaging request was a clear indication that my remaining time there was short. That's why I decided to find a different job ASAP. The revisions were just a constant tinkering with ideas, indicative of not having a clear plan from the get-go. There's a certain amount of revisions needed when working on production drawings as problems arise. At her firm, the revisions were excessive and constant. As the owner-architect, she either could not make up her mind or chose to forget about the volume of changes she was making. I didn't understand how bad it was initially, and if I was older or more experienced, I would have pushed back a bit on progressing it into the production phase. Our project manager was weak-willed and just rolled with the punches as best as he could. Our boss became irritated that I was frequently falling behind on her initial production deadlines, and the PM didn't have my back. Overall, bad planning and time management was reflecting poorly on her in the eyes of her clients. As the newest and greenest employee, I was a convenient scapegoat for her version of reality. As far as being a Scientologist, I don't think so. This was a boutique architectural firm, and I heard plenty of gossip that her husband's construction business was keeping it afloat financially. It's a great story with good details about how petty you are, haha, but I guess they deserved it. My former company used this years ago. On paper, it had to account for tasks completed for other departments so we could bill them. On paper, we had to be as accurate as possible. In practice, few people do this. Many people just spend 1 hour every day at the end of the month to estimate and imagine the situation. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a good day.